And we are live. Hold on. Did I do that right? Okay, great. Sorry, just jumped the gun there because we are live. Welcome to Live Action Roleplay with
Cynthia Marie.
And Kai Norman.
And Ryan Omega with. Oh, I'm like hearing all of this echo. It's because I'm putting on several things at once. And we have a special guest with us today that we've brought back from our last interview. If you can introduce yourself to the audience, please, again.
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Tessa Thurman, and I'm glad to be here.
What might people know you from, Tessa?
Oh, well, I've done quite a couple LARPs. I write for a couple, and I work for Hourglass Escapes as a virtual avatar. So you might notice my voice from things like that, or have seen me as a character.
All right. And what is everyone drinking today? Let's start with Sin. What are you drinking today?
I have rosé all day.
Rosé all day.
Yeah.
Most popular rosé.
Mhm.
Hi.
I am drinking one of those kind of healthy but really questionably colored juice drink things. We'll see how that goes.
Questionable juice. Got it. Tessa, what are you drinking today?
I have less questionable orange juice.
Yay, less questionable fruit. And I am drinking Sam's purified drinking water because I got this while I was at the studio today shooting for React. So, next, shoutouts. Do we have any shoutouts for today that we want to? For people who are not familiar with shoutouts, it's basically us just giving praise for really cool things or really cool scenes, or just people who we want to acknowledge on this podcast. I'm going to start with Tessa this time.
Oh, geez. I guess if I have to shout out Hourglass Escapes, Hourglass Escape Room is in Seattle, where I live and work, and we do have a discount code for anyone watching. That's Tessa10, and it will give you 10% off. And they're big old productions where I have to strap on a camera, and there's like a 360-degree view, and they've got Evil Dead themes. So if you want to see me pretend to be a ghost pirate, but only my hands and voice, while you solve a mystery, Hourglass Escapes.
Nice. Kai.
I don't have any shoutouts. I actually feel like for quarantine over the last couple of weeks, I've kind of stayed home a whole bunch and not really done a lot, so.
All right. Sin.
Well, my shout out, as per normal, is to everybody who's still fighting the good fight. Keep on going and do what you do best. And specifically, I actually have a birthday shout out to Miss Lindsay Hamilton. She plays Varka in Twin Mask, who happens to be my now deceased girlfriend, or my character is deceased. That was her girlfriend. So I just wanted to shout out to my LARP girlfriend. Happy birthday!
Nice. My shout out is to my friend PJ, who people may know from Secret, but he also has his own channel, Nat20 Productions, where I got to play Pathfinder for the first time. And I played Argo, the muscle pug. And I have never played a pug before, nor Pathfinder, but I really, really like the character, even though he died. It was he was a very I just really channeled the pug, did a lot of snorting. He was a fighter, so a lot of his answers were what, 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 what. Just like an annoying pug. I just really channeled pug, and it just was a lot of fun. So thank you, PJ, for allowing me to play that one shot.
Cute.
So for today's topic, we picked a topic where at the end of last podcast, Tessa talked about other subjects, including roleplay fatigue, and all three of the hosts went, "Oh my God, yes," at the same time, which told us this is a topic we need to talk about. LARP and roleplay fatigue. Tessa, how do we explain what that is to somebody who doesn't know what it is?
I suppose roleplay fatigue is when a activity such as role-playing, tabletop, LARPing, interacting with others in a kind of make-pretend way is suddenly not as engaging, or you want to, I don't know, step back from it a little bit, or you're just tired when you go and play that make-believe character version of yourself. Sometimes it's without explanation. There's no trigger. It just kind of happens, and it's kind of mm, debilitating a lot of the time to my characters and how I like to play because we want LARP and roleplay to, at its core, be fun. So when it stops being fun, there is some issue that we need to address.
Mhm. And I was going to ask, like everyone in the group, have you experienced this phenomena?
Mm-hmm.
Sin,
Going through it now.
going through it now?
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of shows lately. In fact, in the last week, I did how many days in a week? 7. I did 6 shows. And then in terms of like overall since the pandemic, I actually like really wanted to unplug from LARP, just because I was just tired. It was done and done with situations. It's interesting that you brought up like a trigger or a lack of a trigger. I feel like I had a little bit of both kind of happen all at the same time, and I was just kind of like, I'm good. I'm tired. So yeah, definitely been having that for a while now.
Hmm. At the same time, you mentioned you did 6 shows last week.
Yeah.
I, I just assumed that would just naturally bring on fatigue because that's a lot of shows for anybody.
Yeah, as well as working a full-time job. So I would like I'd go to work at 7, get out at 5:30, hurry up and put makeup on, sit down, do a show until 10, 11 o'clock and do it all over again.
Wow.
Tired.
That'll do it.
Wow. Kai, have you experienced anything like that?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm more. I feel like I need to ask for a little clarification on it. Are we talking about like playing a specific character, or are we talking about LARP in general? Because there is such a thing as too much of a good thing.
Mm.
You can burn yourself out or overload yourself on playing a hobby. So what is more LARP fatigue in that kind of way, or is it both?
I think it's both. It depends on everyone's personal situation. So you may be having LARP fatigue with a certain character that you, I don't know, keep playing but are tired of, and you'd be fine playing an alt or an alternative character. But sometimes you're just tired of the game or all LARPs specifically.
Hmm.
It's dependent on what your situation is.
I feel like I've had some times where my characters have accumulated more responsibility than I was necessarily prepared for. And just like how sometimes if you're playing a multiplayer game, especially MMOs with friends, you can sometimes find playing becomes more of an obligation and a job than actually a hobby and enjoyable. So I feel like I could definitely identify with that there.
Uh, I know that when I used to play Vampire, there were many times when a lot of the role play happens in downtime or through a lot of emails. And I remember there were times when I was heavily involved in networked Vampire that I would spend 4 or 5 hours in just email role play to handle all the stuff that I need to do just so I can do the LARP in person for 3 or 4 hours and spend 20 hours just in emails to resolve all of those issues. And at that time, I felt fine. I was like, I'm really getting into my character. I really am working on these politics. But when those politics crash, uh, there are times when I feel like I'm done. I'm done with LARP. I'm gonna go walk away, and I always come back.
I mean, sometimes it's something specific, like you set yourself goals and then sometimes they can't be met. Like other PCs just don't allow you to be met, or the context of the rules or meta just can't happen. And that's definitely something that would be a heavy trigger for me. But sometimes just going to the LARP itself or doing the optional bonuses like RP emails becomes habituation. And this time, I don't mean habituation in the sense of we're conditioning ourselves through habit to do it. I mean the different psychological term of habituation. So this one is the diminishing of emotional or psychological response, even physiological response, to a frequently repeated stimulus. So if you want to do that thing over and over time it loses its appeal, it's because you've become so used to it that all of the extra fun and dopamine and serotonin and all that good stuff that you get from it, you've become so habituated to doing it that it doesn't really do anything anymore. So, like, smoking your first cigarette might give you a really huge nicotine jolt, but after you become neurologically habituated to it, you just kind of do it out because you need to. And it's not as fun or gives you as much of a jolt as it did before.
Can that mean the inverse of that, where the absence of that can provoke things as well?
Oh, for sure. If you're getting a lot of, for example, dopamine withdrawal because you're constantly getting some sort of reward when you gamify the LARP and you're used to it, if you have a withdrawal from that kind of gratification every month, that can actually lead to a neurological withdrawal from those kinds of neurohormones and neurotransmitters that you're used to getting. So if you're constantly used to getting that and you stop, it can also affect how you think and how you feel.
Tessa, I want to pose a question to you. Has there been a time when you felt role play or LARP fatigue?
Oh yeah, sure. So my Dystopia Rising main is Cordial Heartwind, and I ended up somehow becoming the president of the town uh, more than once. And that's a lot of responsibility for a character I built to like bake bread and hand it to new people. And I at first, I enjoyed a lot of the responsibility, but as Kai said, once the responsibility started to pile on significantly, and I realized it's more of kind of maintaining my role in a social ecosystem than it is, I don't know, just having fun and running around. Then I had some LARP fatigue involved with playing that character.
Do you do you think that the characters that deal with a lot of power structures are more prone to LARP fatigue because of the amount of responsibility they end up getting?
I do, because there's obviously a risk and reward system to having any sort of like power, especially in a social LARP, even in just sword and board fighting LARPs. Because once you establish yourself in an ecosystem, especially higher up, once you're the big fish in that small pond, it's really hard to let go. Um, and that's just normal human psyche, That's why politicians go corrupt and all that jazz, because you want to hang on to it.
Is because the power makes you, I mean, does it vary from person to person, the actual reasons why holding that power is attractive, or?
Well, I'm sure it varies from person to person. Not everyone wants to be the king or the president, for example. And it's all due to the culture of the LARP. And it's also, I think, truly in a lot of LARPs I've seen, due to what's called cultural reproduction. So in a LARP scenario, sure, there's an overarching story, maybe there's some lore you can draw on, but a lot of what you do will be reproduced later down the line. So if I'm the king and I declare the flag is blue, and all the way down the line 3 years later, even if the king is out of power, the flag is still blue, that's a form of cultural reproduction. And everything that you do can somehow be mirrored later. And people really love when they can teach their skills and values on to the next sort of generation of LARPers. And so people have been doing this since we taught each other how to use tools. And so that's how we carry knowledge along. And to lose that kind of power, not just to say, execute that guy, but to even say, this is how we should do things, is extremely hard.
I have to admit, one of the things that is wonderful about me playing Twin Mask, playing such an old character, is that one of the ways that I introduce my character is my face is on the money. And because it actually is on the printed money, the depiction of artwork of me is on the money. And it came from a role play where I realized that the workers were not paid equally. And because they were keeping very sketchy accounts because there's no way to divide rocks, and the rocks had value. And eventually my character's just mindset is like, well, we could just make notes so it counted these. And then as he kept talking, he realized, oh, I'm making money because these notes are symbols of these silver and gold pieces. And even though it's been forever since I played Twin Mask, uh, it just warms my heart whenever I see like people spend money or use the money because it's like, oh, there it was, because it reminds me of that role play that happened 9 years ago.
Yeah,
Well, I could,
it's also sorry.
no, it's okay.
It's also just being able to see that legacy and having even one small action from a character can really ripple the whole pond of a small group. People love that. So that in itself, even if you're a minor character or like someone who just sits in the tavern and occasionally does something, that's a huge draw for a lot of LARPers.
Oh, Sin, you had a question?
It's just more of a idea that was kind of percolating in my head as Tess was talking, of the idea that you guys were talking about political characters. I'm trying to understand, because I don't generally play a political character, and it like made me wonder like why I do that. And it's because I do that outside of work, like outside of LARP, like as a person who has a full-time job, like that is part of my job, is to be a leader. So when I go into LARP situations, like I want nothing to do with having to like lead anything. And so then it started kind of making me think like, well, I wonder if that's has to do with my introverted, extroverted tendencies. And so I guess the question to you guys who are more politically inclined, do you feel often that your LARP fatigue may be because you potentially are an introvert, and when you go to try to recover your own energy, you have depleted it because you're being an extroverted character and you're naturally just the type who needs to escape and introvertedly recharge? Not sure if I'm articulating that well enough.
Can I go first?
By all means.
Sure.
So, at least for me personally, I've always found any kind of that fatigue that I feel, it's more directed towards what I'm doing and if I'm actually doing things I want as well. If I can't balance my obligations in LARP with the actual goals of my character or the goals of my character's friends, then that's when I start getting uncomfortable and things. I've absolutely played roles where I've spent an entire game solving other people's problems because they've come to me with them, than actually being able to further any of my personal goals. And the net result of that has been, can sometimes feel like, well, what the hell did I just do this entire game? Because all I did was help other people, which sometimes on its own can be its own kind of reward. But if you are playing a game, ultimately when it comes down to it, rather than real life, when you're LARPing, you're paying to be there, usually paying. But you are there to have fun. It's a hobby. And that does mean that there is that slight kind of difference of perspective there, where the player piloting the character is wanting to have fun, and sometimes bureaucracy isn't what they actually really want to be doing at that point in time. I have to admit, I sometimes, whenever I hear combat and I'm getting antsy like that, I'll be right in the middle of dealing with someone's very important problem, and then someone screams. I'm like, sorry, I need to go save someone, and I rush off hoping to go kill a monster.
For me, I experienced LARP fatigue as the same character, Sicario Paloma in Twin Mask, because in the beginning, when I ended up like becoming sort of like a leader type, it was never intentional. It was partly because I could heal. It was partly because I listened to people and they needed someone who had certain status to be able to talk to everybody. So I just kind of helped everybody along. But then there was a point where I was the king on the chessboard, where I was not allowed to go and fight. I was not allowed to go and endanger myself. I was not allowed to resurrect anybody.
Too
So I kind
precious.
of had to sit. So I actually had to sit there and stay safe because my survival was important to the country. And people would think, oh my god, that's a very awesome and privileged position. But for 3 hours, where you kind of have to just sit there and go, I hear fighting outside. I want to go rescue them. You can't. Okay, okay. What if they're all dead? It's like they'll be fine. And then I mean, it's great role play with the people who I'm immediately with, but it it makes me feel completely helpless and useless. And for a long, long time, I experienced fatigue with them because I couldn't do anything to help, and I had to sit there and take it.
So it sounds like your both fatigue came from not being able to be physical. And the way that you guys recharge, at least in Kai's situation, was I'm going to go fight and be physical, and you were told you can't go do that.
Yeah, like I can't help, I can't resurrect. It's like I have the most resurrections of anyone here. Why can't I help?
I have benefited from those resurrections. Thank you.
And
yeah, good.
And like what got me out of it was eventually having a group of people, including my friends Chuck and Ruben and Jordan, and we all played diplomas, and that became such a very different role play. Like, oh my god, I have a family now that I have to take care of, and the end result was a whole new role play that I didn't have to worry about that. So it was kind of cool. Like that's what got me out of that fatigue, finding a new and different way to play this character.
I've always found having a family, like a group of characters that it doesn't have to be a real family, but basically having a squad, as it were, of people that have similar goals or like to help each other solve each other's goals. That kind of like, people who always have your back is a very good way to ensure that you have less fatigue. So long as there aren't that many obligations in terms of managing that group. If a group gets too big, that's again when it starts feeling a lot more like work and a lot less like a D&D adventuring party going off to go fight evil.
Oh, can I jump in?
Mm.
Oh, so at one point, gosh, the Heartwinds, which was my main character's family, was huge. I think it was the largest rover family on the coast, maybe even ever. It had at least 32 named members who attended, and it was large. So I did that a lot in addition to everything else. So it started out very nice, and we had kind of a set of rules and mores that everyone kind of followed to keep everyone on the same track. But as more and more people started to play, and of course, as individuals try to shift their style of play and characters, like most of them fell off the track, or they changed to a whole nother alt sometimes because they wanted to play off something else. That's totally fine. But it became a huge mismatch to try and jumble. So that is definitely outside my scope. And though it was really, really fun when it happened, I don't think I can do that sort of thing again.
Nice.
That is very valid.
I think it also boils down to a niche. So once you find somewhere you fit, you try and stay there and even expand your niche, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes it shouldn't be expanded, and sometimes you shouldn't be stuck in a bubble of your own creation. So that's also a problem, is we tend to stick ourselves inside bubbles. Like even as Ryan's character shouldn't go out into the battlefield, he still theoretically could have, just would have been outside of maybe his character or how other people feel he should play.
Interesting that you mentioned niche. I don't think I ever truly found my niche in Twin Mask, and I think that's also perhaps why I found LARP fatigue really fast with the game. Very interesting. Because I tried to be a fighter, which I love fighting, don't get me wrong. But I was always pushed out because I wasn't either like the big sword and board boys or like, and I had a big staff, so it's not like I could be very stealthy with the staff. I didn't do the political stuff, and really the only niche that I found was sort of dancing, but I was pushed out by the bards because I wasn't like a poetic bard or a singing bard. So I just never really found my place until I became a storyteller. In which case I found my people.
I think part of that, yeah, I mean, it would seem like a strong element of LARP fatigue could also be brought on by, that quest to find something to do. I know everyone is a little bit different when it comes to how they make other characters, but more often than not, when I make a character, I have loose ideas, but I don't really have any strong goals. And I leave it to basically tossing my character into the world and running around. And initially, they're going to make friends, make allies, and start helping them with their situations. And sometimes more often than not, that means I'm helping them with their stuff, but I'm having trouble finding my own thing to do. And if you spend too long dealing with other people's things without having something that you would like to chase after, I definitely feel that it can potentially burn people out a little bit. Like on one of my more recent characters, I absolutely applied a kind of holy grail kind of target for them, or one of the more recent characters that I've been playing. So, and once I did that, I felt like my character kind of had a lot more meaning.
I think for me, I have the opposite problem. So I'll find something that I want to do, and then once I've found it, then it starts being fatigue ridden. So I've played a game where, for example, I was a professor and I used to have to draw up lesson plans, and I would just sit there and teach, which was great, except I realized I kind of burnt myself out because I limited what I wanted to do. Whereas your fatigue is you've expanded it to I don't know what I want to do, and that burnt me out. So it's really a mix of both that needs to happen to reduce LARP fatigue, which is rough and requires a lot of cooperation and collaboration and honestly trying to blend things together that might not go together automatically.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we have a question from chat.
Great one.
Yeah. So this is from Real Tap. We all live and learn, but have any of you experienced a situation that you worked through as a character in roleplay that has helped identify and shape the way you've handled situations in real life? We'll throw that question over to Ryan because he made the biggest face on that one.
So often, as Sicarial, I usually have to be super diplomatic in order to get colliding parties to act together. And hold on, has experienced a situation you worked through as a character that has identified and shaped the way you've handled situations in real life. Okay, sorry, I had to reread that again. So one of the things that I'll use a simpler version. I used to have a fear of public speaking, and people would never know that now, but it's because I was forced to address a large group of people at once in order to get everyone to do something. It it forced me to calm down, slow my speech, project out loud, think of everything that I want to say, and speak in everything as if it were a direction, not as if it were a thought. And when I came across that clearly, it made improvised public speaking so much easier because I didn't have to think about, are people going to understand? Do people not like me? It's like I stopped all that. All I have to do is just, I need you all to do this, and be very simple. It's not patronizing. It's just, I need you all to do a thing. And now being able to speak in public has given me so many other benefits in real life. In fact, I mentioned today that I came from the React channel, and if I hadn't developed that skill in LARP, there's no way that I can articulate opinions on the things that I watch in React today.
Nice. What about you, Kai?
Call me just as I had to mute my mic to cough.
Sorry.
I've definitely had a lot of things that I have LARP has taught me to do in real life. confidence and the ability to actually just kind of project myself and go out and do things a bit more, that is absolutely a thing. I've definitely had times in my life where I'm a really strong introvert, and then times where I'm a really strong extrovert. And I found that really does kind of ebb and flow with me on a more like slower kind of over a year or so kind of thing. But yeah, wow, I just lost my train of thought. I have absolutely had times where it's helped me though. I mean, public speaking is a very common one, Ryan's saying as well. And I love hearing when people find strength in LARP, you know, through something that they've done, and it gives them the bravery to do it in real life. And I find the most often when I have to lean on those kinds of experiences, again, similar to what Ryan said, I kind of role play myself, but a better version of me that can do the thing. There is a great 20-minute long video done by, well, it's not specifically a video. There's a speech called Make Good Art by Neil Gaiman, the author, comic book artist, comic book writer, and so forth.
Wait, Neil Gaiman?
Neil Gaiman, yeah.
Yes.
I always say Gaiman. Sorry.
You said Neil Gaiman?
I didn't say Gaiman.
I was like, huh?
Gaiman.
I almost believed it.
I know how that my accent kind of blurs it up, but I swear I did not say diamond, Gaiman, or what were you saying?
Huh?
But yeah,
And we broke Ryan.
yeah, anyway,
Sorry.
Regardless, the very popular writer who happens to make great content and seems like quite a sweetheart in real life. There was a speech that he gave to a graduating class, and it's called Make Good Art. And it has a lot of really, really cool nuggets of like good advice. And it's not just for someone who's an artist. I feel that a lot of people could do with listening to that once in a while, just to kind of remind yourself to do certain things for yourself or give yourself a bit more confidence. And one of the points that I really enjoy about his thing is that at one point in time in his examples, he says that he suggested to someone, because they were like, I don't know how to be a writer. I don't know how to start. And what he suggested to them, rather than start giving them the actual proper points, was like, I want you to envision yourself as a writer and imagine what you would do, and then take it from there. And that's very much the idea of like, I joke sometimes it's like a fake it till you make it kind of vibe. Other times it's more like role playing and things, but it all boils down to the same sort of thing. You're instilling confidence in yourself through some kind of methodology. And I don't know if methodology is the right word, but method to empower you and help you do things. Because I mean, Tessa, I don't know if you can necessarily agree or not, support on this, but I feel that human nature is very, very driven by the confidence in which you feel you can do things. If you don't believe you can do something, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean, being cognizant of what you think you can do and then actually feeling what you know you can do, and all of these variables mixed together. LARP is just a way that we tend to explore it. You'll find a lot of people playing just versions of themselves in a fantasy universe, so they can safely explore challenges. You'll also find people playing entirely different characters that are totally not like them in real life, specifically because they can explore a lot of skills, situations, and things that they would never ever encounter, and then kind of gain the confidence or learn that, hey, I was actually kind of good at shooting that ray gun, even though I'm a chicken in real life. Or, I don't know, I am a very managerial person, but I played a little customer service guy, and I've learned maybe I should be nicer to customer service guy.
I once played a vampire, and I didn't have a concept for him. All I said was he's going to be a more sophisticated, more elegant, better dressed, sexier, flirtatious version than me. And it worked because I just kind of thought I'm going to shove all of that into my LARP character. But when I would walk into a room, I wore this 3-piece leather suit with a flowing French cuff dress shirt and a leather tie, and I would walk in as if I owned the place, and I had a leather cat of 9 tails, and I would just look at everyone and go like, and think I own you, and it really did work. Because before I didn't care about how I dressed. I was like, oh, convention shirt, awesome. I'll put it on. Is it clean? Great. But seeing how people treated me so differently after playing that character made me realize how much important it was to just dress and present myself better. I began buying better clothes that suited my style and developed a style, and it was great. And I learned all of that from LARP. But I had to feel that confidence from just trying it out once.
So I have a very different answer to this. You guys all have, I guess, the version of what they've said about that you've learned skills in role play and applied it to real life situations. I walked into LARP later in life than most folk or some folk. And I had already been working at my job for however many years. So I already had a lot of the skill sets that it seemed that a lot of people have been developing through LARP. So I will say that I was able to bring in, from being a dancer all my life, the performance aspect to LARP or to role play, and also all the life experiences. But the thing that I did learn was actually how to work through, it's going to take me a minute to say, how to work through my panic attacks and anxiety disorder. There were several games where I almost didn't show up, was literally crying on the phone to my sister, saying that I couldn't even get out of the bed because I was terrified to even go. I eventually worked through it and made it there. And I remember sitting on my flotation mattress, dressed in my whole costume, literally just sitting there like I can't move, like I can't get out. And it wasn't until my sister and my in-character sister and my in-character brother all came in, was just like, you know what, let's just go walk. And I went for a walk, and that was one of the first times I realized that I can work through my really intense panic attacks to the point that I was nearly about to throw up. Like that's how bad it was. Learning to be able to work through it in the middle of a game while everybody's like fighting around me. And come out and feeling like a normal person. There were several other times that I had full-blown panic attack in the middle of a fight, and I was able to remove myself, take a breather, and go, okay, I need to check out, and I need to go like remove myself and go take care of it. And had I not had those experiences in LARP, I would not have been able to present at a really big presentation for my job while going through a full-blown panic attack and still be able to articulate my points. So not necessarily the skill set that everybody kind of talks about. Like I did public speaking in college. I was on the speech and debate team. So I had no fear about talking to people. I performed in front of thousands of people. That didn't bother me. What was hard was trying to get through a full-blown panic attack and still being able to be articulate or to be able to perform and still look like nothing was going on. So that's what I learned.
Wow, applause to you.
That's so
that's
impressive.
amazing.
Thanks. Still working on it, just for FYI, everybody. Like, I did not master it. Like, it's still hard. But yeah.
I know, like, the subject had been LARP and role-playing fatigue, and I was expecting this was going to be, like, a very downturn topic, but I'm actually feeling inspired listening to you guys. And it's cool that there are methods and ways that we can, I guess, get out of that. But here's a different bent on a question. What if you are just done with LARP? Like, you've tried different LARPs, you've tried different characters, and nothing pings with you. What happens then?
I mean, LARP is a hobby. Ultimately, if it stops being fun, find a different hobby. I mean, I've personally, when I grew up, I didn't find LARP until I was about 15 or 16. I played until I was 19. And then I stopped until I think I was like maybe 29 or 30. So I left for a good like 10, 11 or 12 years. And during that time, I moved to America, start doing a whole bunch of other things. And then I rediscovered LARP, and it caught me back into it, but for different reasons, because I was a different person. I occasionally hear about how your brain or like your personality kind of roughly every 10 or 15 years changes, like not necessarily dramatically, but your goals and the things that you appreciate in things will shift, and you will come out of that time point being a different person with different goals and things. So it makes sense that the stuff that I'm enjoying about LARP now is things that I was terrified about or didn't want to do beforehand.
If you want to cut it off, it's important to be conscious that it is a hobby, like Kai said. For things like, I don't know, chess, you could just put away the chessboard, or you could stop knitting. The problem is that with LARP, we tend to find social ties, either in or out, or both of character. And cutting those social ties is extremely hard. And it's not necessarily true that you have to, if you're knitting, quit all your friends from the knitting club. You just stop knitting. But in LARP, that's really difficult because oftentimes that one point in which you met was LARP, and you don't have that much in common outside of it. And another reason this is really hard is because it's edging on what I like to call Dunbar's number. So due to how your brain works, you have a certain limited capacity to how many relationships you can understand and maintain. So it's about 150. It's contentious, the exact number, but about 150, the size of an old-timey village. So if you go to LARP and you LARP for, say, a year or two, and you make a lot of relationships there, maybe your character knows like 30 people in that LARP very well, and you decide, I'm feeling LARP fatigue, I'm going to step away. You're essentially removing yourself from 30 people in your character's life, but also your life. And since your number was being filled with 30 people from the LARP, there's going to be a huge gap that you're going to feel. That's 30 fewer friends you could have made outside of LARP. Does that make sense? So if your one connection is LARP, it's extremely scary to make new connections outside of it, because oftentimes it's tied in with your friend group. That's a huge chunk of your social life. And it's ingrained that it's a huge chunk of your social life because you can't go out and make 2,000 new friends. You had a limit. And that's really scary to a lot of people. It's the social interaction that tends to tie you to LARP fatigue. And that's why people who play lone wolves or fall out with their factions tend to be able to leave more easily.
Wow.
Huh.
The implication of that to me is kind of scary, because then that means my brain cannot distinguish between the out of character, in character relationships. However, at the same time, most of the time, if I do have in character relationships and I spend enough time with them, some of them, not all of them, do end up being my out of character friends. So that does make a lot of sense.
And I think it's also important to remember that oftentimes, say, for example, a faction kind of all leaves at once. It's because maybe, I don't know, they were treated badly in the game, but that whole social unit is choosing to skedaddle. And that's typically because they're tied in together very strongly. And they're maintaining that social structure that they had in the LARP by leaving it all together. So it's not always impossible to leave a LARP without a huge chunk of your friends, but I really do suggest figuring out, hey, You are my friend in character, but we are also friends out of character. Just confirming that, sharing other common interests, and becoming deeper friends with your LARP friends than just, I see you as my character. Because that's both a deeper connection between you and your 150 people, but also just better in general. You shouldn't have to anchor yourself to one hobby.
Let's see. I believe there are a couple of other questions here.
Yeah, we've got one from Jackalope Studios, which is how it, I think lines up very nicely with the topic area that we're rolling around in right now. How would you deal with trying to change your experience when there are people who are relying on you and don't want you to change what you are doing because of how they want to play and how you are tied together in the game?
That's a tough one. Social pressure is the name of the game of LARP. Quite literally, you're forming a culture altogether, some of you from the very start. So when you go to change that, I think it's important to be kind of very direct. If you want to say, hey, I have to stop doing this for my own sake, maybe also for yours. This is why, this is how, and this is when. If you try and fade off into the background, that might work, but that might not be as good for most people's mental health. There's no clean break. You worry, did they not like me for changing my character or doing such and such? Having a very clear distinction is important. And some people are very ingrained in their characters. They've been doing it for years and might see it as a personal betrayal because that's how their character feels. And it's important to remember that even though we pretend in character and out of character are separate, it's one brain. We're going to have chemical mental responses in the same space. There's one pilot of the robot, even if we change the robot. So just being very clear, which is rough and sometimes makes people angry or sad or upset, is the best way to kind of change tactics.
I think just reading the question, just clear communication. If they're relying on you, and there are two ways to go about it. One of is, okay, this is a lot. I need help. Usually, if you say I need help, um, most people go, so most people will kind of like fill in that void or willing to help because you communicated that. The other one is more out of character in terms of I have a job and I can't be there for like 2 games because I have a real life job. Usually, if you define all of that, people will understand. If they're going, no, you still have to do that, most people will tend to find that unreasonable. So as long as you communicate what those boundaries are, uh, generally people are not going to question it. It's when you don't communicate and you feel like I have to fill this because everyone's relying on me, that becomes more of an internal pressure that you've built in for yourself.
So, I mean, I'd like to chime in and add to the boundaries, the idea of the social contract. I think we've talked about this before. Understanding what your role is to that person and understanding if you can make that sort of commitment. So, if your role to that person is you are the emotional support and you don't want to do that because that is too taxing, you guys need to have that shared communication as to what that role is and why it needs to change because it's not working for you. If it is truly in character, hey, I need you because you give me money, I totally would understand if that person was just like, oh, well, I need to change the way I do things. Have that conversation of like, well, hey, I rely on you on money. Was it something that happened in the game that you're not getting money? How can I help you? Like stuff like that. But I think people really need to have the conversation as to whether or not it is an in character or out of character relationship that you're relying on one another, and be really detail out what those things mean so that you don't offend one another. So idea of boundaries, but really just clearly communicating what those roles are.
Yeah, I mean, in those kinds of environments, the game becomes secondary. You are more important than the game. I know that some purists or old guard LARPers are a lot more of the kind of playstyle of fuck your feelings, let me have my game. On the flip side, I know that Nordic LARPs are a lot more handle things before and after with workshops and decompressions and let game carry on how they are. But even those games have those kind of tap out abilities where if you are getting overwhelmed, you're allowed to be like, I real life, I gotta go for a second kind of thing. And while usually people only tend to internalize that in a immediate, like, something is triggering or causing me great discomfort, reminding me of a bully of my childhood or something like that, I'm melting down right now. But that kind of mentality applies to everything, which means, yeah, talk to the players and explain your position to them and come at them with a side of empathy. And if they start telling you, fuck your feelings, then they're probably not someone you wanted to play that much longer with anyway. You are more important than the game, and I will always agree with that statement. And if someone tries to tell you differently, I feel they're wrong.
To put a more positive spin on it, it's also important to tell people during these conversations, if, I don't know, you've been their support, if you leaving will change the way they play the game entirely, that this is an opportunity for growth. If you're the responsible party, if you're the king of the castle, if you're the working mom, and you have to skedaddle or change how you play, it's an opportunity for them to step up or figure out a new way of doing that. To change their systems is not always the worst. Clearly, to get to a position of supporting someone or being friends with them or anything, they had to encounter something new and different. And this is just another opportunity to do something new and different. So if you want to spin it in a more positive light, rather than like, I'm sorry, you can say, this is a great opportunity for you to fill my niche, to build that social ecosystem for yourselves, even when I'm not here or I'm doing something over there.
Oh my
I
God.
love that idea.
I just keep thinking, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you first, Ryan.
I just kept thinking of moments where I would have a long walk alone with characters, and I would tell them a lot of things, people who I have groomed, people who I have talked to, and I turn to them and say things like, I'm leaving now, but you are ready. And that's a way to kind of transition that character and basically almost tell the person who's relying on you, you have leveled up. Because you have leveled up, I am going to give you the gift of knowing what it's like to have this much power. And then leave. There are ways to spin it.
That is ominous. That is ominous. All right. Speaking of spinning, we've got one more question, so I'm going to spin it towards the question.
Hang on. Let me. I wanted to throw in here, which is very similar to what Ryan said. And yeah, like the whole dynamic of like master, student, Jedi, Padawan kind of like dynamic. Sometimes that's things that people actually plan and they consent to. Other times you will find yourself like working for or having people work for you. And those are the great situations where you can incorporate almost like kind of, what's the right word? Retroactively establish that they were being trained so they could be your replacement. And that's absolutely something I've been doing in Twin Mask, and I'm very excited to have someone else take over playing the big leader cop kind of guy. So yeah, it's good moves.
Right on, right on. All right, next question. Have you ever had a controversy with characters in LARP that spilled over into real life with said people? I'm going to answer real quick because mine's a short and sweet one. Yes. It was very public. I don't like it. I don't really go to that LARP anymore. Next person, go for it.
Yes. What happened was I was playing in a game where the character was Prince of a game for 8 years. I had just been in that game for like a year. That's a long time to be a standing Prince. And the problem was that I heard was the game was getting very static because the Prince didn't really do anything. It was him and his cronies. So the way we challenged that was I had to play an Archon to investigate like this, what was going on. And we decided we're going to role play this investigation. He gave me so many wrong answers that it made sense in my head that we're going to take you to the Justicar for questioning. In the meantime, someone else has to take over the domain. So I did that, because I had to play an NPC. I was just a new assigned storyteller at the time, and Guy let me have it for 20 minutes, just yelling at me. It's like, how dare you come in and just ruin 8 years of my role play, and I just had to sit there and take it. Because the game was gonna die from just being static. But at the same time, I kept it to all role play. You did really, really stupid things in front of me. And that group left. There were definitely people who just didn't talk to me anymore. I also didn't understand the idea of aftercare because I didn't know about things like that at the time. At the same time, the game was static. No one was able to move anywhere because it was always him and his cronies in charge of a game. And finally, the game began to breathe. People can actually do things again. But it took me being the bad guy to do it.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm probably overstepping with some of Tessa's knowledge here, but it seems to be very much the case that because the mecha, the robot, the Gundam, or whatever is feeling feelings, the pilot is feeling those feelings, and that bleed, that spillover is going to happen sometimes, whether you want it to or not, and unfortunately, let's kind of really target the reality of this. Some adults can't handle their shit sometimes. And
I'm sorry, that was just literally the cruxes of 2020.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Well said, Kai.
Very true. Not everyone is the model perfect LARPer who can be like, I'm hurting, I need to talk it out, or hey, are you okay? Did I hurt you? And so forth. Like all of those extra the extra steps you make to make sure that the people around you are having fun, that's something that honestly in normal human society is a lot less common. And I think that's a crying shame, because honestly, LARP, I feel, has made me far more compassionate and empathic for the people around me. But it is kind of the truth. Not everyone has those things. It's a learned skill, basically.
Well said.
Exactly.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, I think you're totally right. I think that people, when they get into character and they don't necessarily realize, even if they understand that it's them reacting, especially if in their lives they have less control and they have more control here, are very not interested in letting it go, or they are specifically trying to fill a void that you are in some way threatening. That's especially when I think people are most reactive in a negative sense, especially outside of game. And sometimes the reason that characters are not necessarily good people, this is not all the time, is because sometimes it can be reflections of what people feel about themselves and choose to project. So, especially with bad time characters who are especially bad at taking criticism or have some sort of fallout that bleeds into out of character, it tends to be because they can't kind of comprehend, oh, this is a big deal for anyone but myself and my character. And that's really hard because they're feeling pain, even if they can't necessarily empathize with the other people's pain. But it's something that everyone kind of has to deal with. And that can be hard, especially in a group losing a major character to some big blowout, even if one party was clearly wrong. It's just human nature. We want to defend ourselves, but sometimes it's not always correct.
Yep.
Yeah. On that note, we are going to begin wrapping up this episode of Life Action Roleplay. I want to thank our guest Tessa again for being such an amazing guest. Oh my God, if we could have you forever, we probably will. Tessa, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh goodness. So Asset Tessa1 on Twitter or Asset Tessa101 on Facebook. Asset is just Tessa spelled backwards. So there.
Palindromes.
Yay, palindromes. Sin, where can people find you on the internet?
All right, here we go. You can find me on Instagram, Cynthia__Maries, where you can see all my crazy costumes from all the shows that I've been doing. Or on Twitter, you can find me at Sin Dancer, where I talk about really weird stuff like Sleepy Hollow or the movies that I'm trying to watch. Tomorrow, we will be doing Secret, ran by the illustrious Ryan Omega, and Kaida will be playing yet again our characters. So exciting. I am playing in an Aliens RPG on the Initiative Order next Saturday, the 17th. I am also doing it is not out yet, so I really can't talk about it too much, but there's a possibility I will be playing a very canon vampire coming up on a vampire show. So stay tuned to my social media and you might find out who I'm playing coming up. There's a bunch of other shows that are coming up. Just check out my social media and you can find out when I'm going to play. Peace.
All right, Kai.
Yes, that is me. Hi. Hello. I am definitely a human LARP runner, probably. You can find me on all of the places that you can find me, which would be Instagram and Twitter mostly, under Yokai Props. That is YOKAIPROPS. I build things and scream at things and so forth, depending on if you're looking in Instagram or Twitter. And I also run the Northern California chapter of Dystopia Rising. We are obviously not running in-person games right now, but we are running a fairly consistent run of online games, and that has been a blast. Also myself and Tessa, you're also writing for the Fall of Two Cities, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm also a writer for the Fall of Two Cities DRAU, so a big national game, but set kind of at the beginning of the zombie fall.
Yeah, it's going to be a standalone. You might be able to influence some of the new lore coming out if you are so interested. Otherwise, if you don't know Dystopia Rising, it's okay. It is a post-apocalyptic zombie survival one-shot. It's going to be super cool. The website for that is mostimprobable.com/FOTC.
All right, and I am Ryan Omega. You can find me on Instagram under Ryan Omega. You can find me on Twitter under Ryan OMGA. You can find me here tomorrow being the headmaster / dungeon master of #Secret Community College of Readiness Initiative Training, where in tomorrow's quest, they will be delivering a package from Durnan to Mert the Moneylender, but they get stopped by a former high school classmate. So you could check that out tomorrow at 8 p.m. If you want to see previous episodes of Secret, we now have a YouTube with live action roleplay with all of the previous episodes, but we also have the last episode of live action roleplay also on that YouTube. It's easier to actually put that on right now before I actually have time to edit the podcast. So if you want to see it in its uncut glory, it is now up on YouTube. And basically, we will now start turning around episodes that we have here on YouTube because our brilliant technical director Joe is the reason why we can do this now. So if you want to check out our YouTube, we can now see an archive of all this stuff. You can also catch me on the React channel. I just shot a couple more episodes today. I can't talk about what they are until they come out, but that's the thing by Fine Brothers. And if you look at YouTube and looked up React channel, I am one of the official adult reactors for that. And on Mondays, you will find me on Scabby Rooster, Total Party Kills, the D&D monster game, And for next couple of weeks, I will be one of the live stream producers with Indicate. And so we're going to be busy for the next couple of weeks. So we won't be out, but we will be down while I'm producing a big international convention. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially everyone who has subscribed or gifted, specifically Spring Hill Studios, Real Tap, Tin Alphaba, Scabby Rooster. Thank you so much. Please stay tuned. We're going to be rating our friends over at the Scabby Rooster. Please say hi to them and support them in their new endeavor, where they are playing Mouse Guard. And some of our friends, like Sam Houston, are also playing. Sam Houston and Fabian Skelly are also playing characters. So please say hi while we raid them. And until next time, bye.
Bye.